Welcome back to the Flyers Nitty Gritty Podcast, Gettin Gritty Wit It with your host, Yariv. I got my partner in crime, my recent partner in crime, Anth Merrigan, who's joined me for a few so far. Ant, how you doing, buddy?
We'll talk about it. But not bad considering they've lost 2 in a row. But we'll talk about it.
Yeah, no, I hear that. And one of our top writers, you might have seen a bunch of his articles going on. He's been on a tear of late. Frankie, I'm going to butcher this, but I'm going to try to say it right. Steskal?
All right, you got it, brother. Wait, now we're talking. Now we're talking.
Proud of myself on that one. Thank you. Well, welcome to the show, buddy. First time, and happy to have you.
Happy to be here.
Tell people where they can follow you real quick. It's the first time you've been on the podcast, so give yourself a little introduction.
Oh, love it. Yeah, so Frankie, best go by Frankie James on Twitter. You can follow me at Frankie Steskal on my Twitter handle. Facebook, Frankie James. I'm around. Not hard to find, so keep looking.
Love it. And honestly, he has been on a tear, so if you're reading our articles lately, you've probably read a few of his so far. So thank you, Frankie, for your hard work.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
Love it. All right, so we got a lot to talk about. Not the best of news, but I don't want to get into doom and gloom. I say the Flyers are down, but not out, and we'll get into that. And I think that the team will probably, or has been echoing that as well. So let's go through the bad news. So we'll start at the Flyers' 3-1 loss in that game that then put them down to a point of being down 2-1. That was game 3. The Flyers, they came out not their best game. Definitely disappointing, especially because they came out and they had the lead on that one and then just kind of blew the game after that. And it's kind of been a Jekyll and Hyde playoffs for the Flyers overall, and that game definitely reflected it. But then, I would say we go into game 4. I think hopes were high, but we had that delay. It didn't really work out the way we thought. But I would say overall the Flyers losing 3-2 in a game where I would say they battled. Maybe not from the very beginning. They definitely had their sore spots in that game. But I would say in a portion of that game, the second period, that is probably the pinnacle of Flyers hockey that we saw since we hit the playoffs. I would even say over the round robin. Because it's the first time the Flyers actually looked like the team that we saw that landed them in first place. Having said that, they still lose that game 3-2. And Flyers find themselves down 3-1 in the series and not in a great position to come out on top. However, we have a lot to get into and a lot of nuance to get into around that. So first, let's open it up to thoughts. Frankie, since it's your first time, I'll let you open up. What do you think? What do you think about the overall 2 games? Let's just talk about them both as one, right? Because overall, it was kind of back-to-back, boom, boom, double losses, and we're back.
Well, pick it up just like you said. It was like a tale of 2 cities, but the outcomes are so almost identical. You're playing. You're trying to play a tight game. You're losing 3-1. You're losing 3-2. These games that are so close, and it's coming to the point where it's like, what more can they do other than these players have to step it up? I mean, that's one of the biggest things that a lot of people are saying. Like, when are the big guns going to start stepping it up? And for these 2 games, I mean, we haven't lost back-to-back games since January. That's impressive. That's really, really hard to do, especially in today's NHL. So with the high hopes of going into yesterday's game, I mean, us Flyers fans everywhere, there's no way we could. This is our game. We're going to tie it back up, and it's going to be back and forth, and it's going to come down to somebody's going to step it up. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I really like that, and that's a good observation about the back-to-back losses. Didn't even consider that till you just said it.
Oh, thank you.
And what are you thinking, man?
Yeah, I think I was in the same boat as what Frankie just said there. Everyone's thinking back-to-back games. We don't lose back-to-back games. That's like the mindset going into that game, and that's good from a player's perspective, being like, all right, we have confidence, right? It gave them like a new instilled confidence. They were not very different in score, but I thought they were very different games in general. I thought the Flyers, for the first time in game 4, played hockey. It was the first time I saw them, and I was like, oh, this is the Flyers team that we saw. every other game, including the Montreal series, and there were, I think we talked about last podcast, a couple games in the Montreal series where they were just tight games, but they played good. They played well defensively and whatnot. But I think yesterday was the first time you're like, wow, the Flyers can dominate the zone at points. And they did it. That really, after that 10-minute lapse in the second period, or first period, where outshot like 19-2 or something, whatever it was, after that, they just turned it on. So,
I think it was 17-7, I believe, were these shots in the first on that one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so after that, and I think of those 7 shots we had, 5 of them came in the first 5 minutes, and then after that, we were abysmal.
Yep.
But second period on, they were very good. And I was like, wow, they're going to pull this one off. They're going to pull this one off, and we'll get into the game in more detail about, what actually happened and whatnot. But, all in all, like Frankie had said, it really is just one game, and you lost both of them, unfortunately.
Yeah, and you guys are totally right, and they weren't the same game. Like, I actually feel better about this loss, even though it was a more crucial game than the last one. So this one, and I don't want to say it's an effort thing, because I really believe that it's actually just effort, but they were organized. They played like a mess in the beginning, but I've been talking about this for a while, is that I believe the Flyers' problems come from just lack of puck support. Where and you had a beautiful observation. We were watching the game the other night, and they did it again. Provorov did it again last game, and I think it ended up in the back of the Flyers' net. Or was it maybe that was game 3? But I remember just these breakout passes where the players, there's so much gap between the forwards and the defensemen. Yet everybody's off in no man's land, and then I saw so many bad changes, and you leave, even like the turnover that Phil Myers had last game. Yes, that was a bad play on his part. I do not disagree. I'm not saying it's the fault of everybody else, but those mistakes happen. The key is if you have puck support, you can get away with those mistakes. And just when there is none, the Flyers, it's brutal. Like when the Flyers played good against Montreal, the reason they won those games is because even if they gave up an opportunity, there was always a guy nearby to clear the porch, right? There was no secondary opportunities, almost none. Maybe they hit the post or something, but they weren't, even if they were in the zone, it was primarily outside. And that's really why the Flyers won those series. In this series, I can't even say they did that in the beginning, right? Only now, for the first time in that second period, did you see a combination of both. And I think the front top line has something to do with that. Frankie, you mentioned this. I'm going to roll this back to you guys. Let's talk about the top line.
Okay.
Top line, I think, showed some promise, but I want to hear what you guys have to say first. Frankie, let's roll back to you again first. What do you think about let's say the consistent top line, which has been Giroux, Couturier, and Voracek? What do you think about the performance from game 3 to 4, and also just overall, where do you think it's trending?
Well, I think that's one of the most important things you have to think about is that they're. Now, we can obviously see that some players aren't producing where they want to. But this is the top line you have to have on the ice. And I understand about AV where he's looking at with wanting to switch things up. I mean, you almost see things being switched up every single game. He's playing it game by game. And that's not necessarily an issue. But I actually, watching Claude Giroux on the third line, it almost looked like he was actually hurting that line a little bit. You start to see Scott Lawton drop down a little bit in progress. So you have to take the fact that you have to have Claude Giroux and his players on the first line with him. I think that's the only way that top line is going to work. Now, with that being said, this previous game from last night, I think it actually was Claude Giroux's best game. I think he's really, really frustrated. I mean, he knows he's frustrated. Everybody knows he's frustrated. Any shot he has on net, you can see the reaction. It's. I mean, anybody that's played hockey, the team needs you, and you can't put the puck in the net when you're the leader. You can see the frustrators eventually. We're all human. It happens, and we've all played the game. So I think that last night's loss, picking up from what you had said, was the better of losses because you've seen some domination. And believe it or not, I think I've watched the Flyers actually a lot in this series dominate, whether it's been a stretch of times or a play. Canadians was a little bit more difficult the first series. You couldn't really see too much domination. You saw shutouts, but your defense was really tight, and Carter Hart was playing the top goalie in the playoffs, in my opinion. So last night was the better of the losses, but it still shows we are down 3-1. It's crunch time.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting that one. And what do you think?
Crunch time was an old Flyers shirt, I think, back in the day that you got at a playoff game, right? So,
This is actually a saying of mine.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because the first line did have a lot of zone time. I felt like in watching them, I felt like, I don't know, I'm just throwing out a percentage, but 80% of their shifts were in the O zone, which is good to see. But that being said, and they had good scoring chances off of that too, obviously. If you're spending that much time in the O zone, you better. But that being said, they still had the one goal, right? And that was it. I mean, you're still not producing. At the end of the day, they could look good. They could spend time in the zone. But if they're not producing, it doesn't mean anything. And you need your top players to produce. If you look at every other team that's in playoffs right now, their top dogs are producing. Even if you look at a team like the Avs, right? Their top dogs are producing, and they're still losing games. So that just goes to show you with our top dogs are not producing, and we're still in games. So it's like, it's almost like a tease. You're almost like, man, I wish they could just get going. If they could get going, it would be a 2-2 series, maybe 3-1 swing the other way, right? Last night, you got to consider a definite win, so there's your 2-2, and maybe we steal a game if our top players were playing well. And then, Yariv, kind of going back to what you said earlier, I mean, the top line as far as they were supporting the puck low, I saw multiple times where Voracek was almost at the hash marks, taking away a lane, and was able to get back up to the point because the Islanders love working that puck low to high, shot on net, low to high, shot on net. Mm-hmm. And they played well in the row zone, and honestly. And Giroux, best game by far last night, still couldn't score. And that's just a Flyers story, right? Backup goalie comes in, steals a game. Always happens to the Flyers. I don't know what it is, but Greif, if you rewatch that save that he made on G in the third period, it was an unreal save. He actually got it with his glove. Originally, I thought he got it with his pad, but he actually got it with his glove, which is crazy. So overall, I think they did look better. Hopefully, they could build off the momentum into the next game, and then from there, hopefully, one of those guys does get a tuck, and that's what you're hoping is G finally gets his goal, because I think even in one of the pressers, someone called him straight out and said, "Hey, how's it feeling like not scoring like one goal in 25 playoff games or whatever it is?" So. You definitely know he's feeling the pressure.
Yeah, as if that stuff helps. But yeah, no, I hear you. But it's interesting. I actually thought he was the best Flyers forward in that game overall, which is surprising. He didn't end up scoring one. And I feel like that's kind of like the tone of the series so far. We haven't really gotten the bounces, but we also haven't played well enough to get the bounces in a lot of ways. Now, I do think it's an interesting scenario here, because I think if the top line gets going, like we were saying, it could be a very different series. So there is kind of this weird uptrend scenario here. Like, Flyers could come in and steal one, and at the very least make this series interesting. You go in with 6 as a 3-2 series. If you win one more game, that's it. Everything's out the window, no matter what happened. All those games, and obviously we're going to say this, right? We're the team that's losing, right? So we're obviously going to try to dig for some hope or something like that, right? But I will point back to that comeback the Flyers had. The one thing that I don't want to say I predicted it, because that's definitely not true, but I do remember thinking at the time, like, oh, it's definitely possible because they're playing well enough to win each game. And I was like, and if it could have easily gone the other way, which I don't know if necessarily that would be the case here, then I was like, then why couldn't they win 3 games in a row, right? So I would say that in this scenario too, that at the very least, like, if the Flyers really come out and play the way they played, they could win at least 2 in a row, right? Maybe they won't win 3 in a row, maybe they'll lose in a game 7. But they could make this interesting, at the very least show people that, hey, at least we can be playoff performers. Because I would argue, and we'll get into goalies in a little bit, but I would argue as far as like the lineup outside of the goalies, that there's probably going to be some tweaks now. The fact that this team kind of fluttered, its way into the playoffs, I don't want to say it's going to make a bunch of moves you were never going to make, but you have to consider that. Maybe add physicality, add an edge that maybe was not shown in this playoff run. Frankie, I'm going to go back to you again. Let's keep it consistent. What do you think? What do you think about the likelihood?
Well, you know what? One of the first things that came to my mind, and it's just so unfortunate, is I believe that the Flyers are one of those teams that probably is missing playing in front of fans. Going back to that 10 years ago when the Flyers came back in that from that 3-0 deficit to the Bruins. I remember those home games, and I remember that Game 7 because I was down at the Wells Fargo Center hanging out with some good friends, and the excitement even there was big. So I will say home ice is definitely big for Philadelphia. It's big for all Philadelphia.
They went down. They went down, too, again. 3-0.
Yeah.
Just like...
So I think it's possible. I think you really have to play to one game at a time. I mean, that is the most important mindset that the players, the fans, anybody that's covering the team, it's one game at a time. And like you said, you get to that Game 7, we're writing a new book, baby, because it's coming.
I love it. I love how we're getting excited about a Game 7.
Yeah, I'm a hype man.
He's just as positive as Jamie over here. I'm not going to be negative about it, but you really do have to take it game by game. I truly believe if you look at it with that approach, then you have a chance of winning it. Because if you're looking too far ahead, it's just not going to be good, right? You're going to make the mistakes that you're making. You're going to be forcing plays. So I think that there is a chance. I think they will steal the game tomorrow. My only thing that always worries me is that one of the things that I don't know if we're going to touch on it any, but I think we're getting a little bit out-coached right now. And tomorrow they have the home ice advantage with a change. And I think that hurts us because he puts that first line against our third or fourth constantly. And in those games, we really did struggle in that aspect of it. So I think that's something that we could talk about the players all day, right? Because ultimately they're the ones on the rink that have to play and get the win. But I think AV has to be a little better tomorrow, quite honestly, as well. I've seen that fourth line enough in the past 4 games. And it's just one of those things where if you're going to win a game, you have to put your best players on the rink and they have to produce. And that's plain and simple.
That's perfectly said. And
yeah,
you see with the way Barry Trotz is a Stanley Cup champion, and he only won it a few years ago. He has the ability to shut teams down when similar to how AV has done it. Barry Trotz will also collapse your team if he gets a lead. And sadly, we saw the Flyers 3-0 lead go away. Granted, we won it in overtime, and it was a very exciting game. But you watch that get taken away immediately from turnovers. So coaching is going to play a big factor. And like Anthony mentioned, I think Barry Trotz may have the edge on that.
Yeah, and I think you're spot on with that. And actually, we weren't going to bring that up. I left it off the agenda, right? But it's definitely, I think it's the highlight of what we're talking about here. And I think you're correct that he is being outcoached. I don't think it's the end all be all, But in this scenario, I mean, you're seeing cases where there are times where you're like, Again, the fourth line comment, I think that's something that could be echoed by a large portion of the fan base at this point. And I'm usually okay with it because you see it's kind of a repeated pattern that he uses them. But I do want to see, like, we're up against the wall right now. You know what I mean? We have only so many minutes left on the ice in the entire season. Like, and I can appreciate the process and all that. But like you're saying, man, if this top line doesn't take over this next game, we're not surviving to Game 6, in my opinion, because the Islanders, this is the thing about the Islanders, which I think scared everybody the most. They do not make mistakes. They do make some, right? They make some. They don't make many, and they capitalize on theirs, and they just discipline it. In my opinion, I think they're a very good team. I don't think that on paper they're an incredible team. I think they're aware of that, and they want to win a championship, and I think they bought in. They bought in completely. I think they realize that with the team they have, they're good enough to win a championship, even if they don't have the best player in the world.
Well, they're playing to their strengths.
Exactly. If you look at their roster, which I'm looking at right now, you're looking at guys: Bailey, Barzell, Bolivier, Brassard, Cizikas, Clutterbuck. Besides Barzell, who did I name that's a glorified player in the NHL, right, or considered a top player in the NHL? None. But
Bolivier eventually.
Yeah, Bolivier
eventually
coming
will
up.
be. Yeah.
And Brassard, he's an older guy. He's an 87, right? He's 33 years old. So he's getting up there. But my point is, what's really impressive about the Islanders is each player on that team fits their role. So if you're putting together this puzzle, each player fits. They don't have a circle trying to fit in a square. And I think, unfortunately, right now, we talked about it, Yariv, when we were watching the game together, we have a couple circles trying to fit in a square. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we don't have a heavy forecheck guy. We don't. Who's our best forechecker? Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And he's like a wild horse out there. Like, he can't control skating. So
it's supposed to be Sean Couturier.
Yeah, I mean, we do have guys who do it, right? But we're not obviously not physical enough. But you know, it's just one of those things where, again, it's going to come down to, I think what you said, Yariv, may be something that AV should echo in the locker room. Hey guys, we may only have a 60 minutes of hockey left in our season, so you have to give your best 60 out there. And with that being said, if you're playing the top three lines more, you're in a do or die situation now. So this is the time, if any time, to play your top three lines more than, you know, trying to roll all four, which you need for the marathon at the NHL playoffs.
Totally.
Yep.
Totally agree with that. So let's talk about, that's all well said, but let's talk about the big, I guess, let's review Elliott real quick, because obviously we can go off on Hart all day. I want to talk about the goalies. We'll talk about Hart, but I want to talk about Game 4, because I thought, you know, obviously Elliott comes in as the other backup. He gives up 3 goals. I wouldn't say any are his fault. I thought he actually had a very strong game. I think the breakaway goal, yes, you would like to see him make that save and that steal, but that's what it is. It's a breakaway goal. I mean, call it what it is. It's a complete breakdown in defensive structure. You end up, but do you hope that he makes that save? Yeah, but it's not the reason we lost. We lost that game for obviously a slew of reasons. And I think Brian Elliott put up a pretty strong performance. I'm glad that he showed that. Actually, he made some excellent saves, if you want me to be honest. Some real stealers, especially when we weren't playing well in that first period. He played excellent. So I thought a pretty strong game for a backup. I'm not going to lie. I do want to see Hart like in every game, because I think he has the ability to steal any game. So hopefully he comes up big next game. Let's go to Anthony on this one. Let's switch it up. Ant, what do you think about Elliott's performance?
Yeah, I'm kind of echoing what you said. I thought he played really well, especially in the first period. That power play, they had 9 shots on, so it's a lot of rubber to be seeing in a 2-minute span, right? So you're talking about 4 or 5 shots a minute. That's a lot, man, especially on a power play where their power play is pretty good. Like, again, like we mentioned earlier, they get low to high, they get pucks on net, right? And they also have guys like Barzell who kind of camp out, wait for their 1-T opportunity. So I thought he played really well. He made a couple of big saves there. Like you said, with the breakaway one, you would like to see it, but man, so much speed coming in on that breakaway. Was it Pageau, right? Had so much speed coming in on that breakaway as a goaltender, which I was a goalie back in the day. When you're teeing back that fast, and you know, it's hard to make a save like that, especially 5-hole. I tell shooters all the time, if you have speed, it's low. It doesn't necessarily always have to be 5-hole, but it's low because as the goalie's going to drop, he's already moving back. So the wickets kind of open up a little bit. So it's a tough save to make. Like, yeah, people would say, oh, man, he's got to stop that goal. It barely crossed the goal line. They hit his leg and trickled in. But there was so much speed that he had. You know, what you really should be talking about is why did Matt Niskanen pinch when there was 3 guys flying up the rink? And that's how he got so much speed. So I thought he played really well. I'm with you, Yariv, though. I want to see Hart back in there 100%. Not that I think it's up for debate. I think Hart's going back in. Hart in the game before in Game 3, I think he did give up a couple squeaky ones. There were obviously defensive breakdowns that happened before that, but that's one of those things where, you know, when it goes through your arm and your waist, like, you want to see that puck just like sit there and be eaten up, and you don't want to see that squeaking through. So I thought it was the right move putting Elliott in, quite honestly. So because, you know, with Hart being on a back-to-back night, I think the last time they played back-to-back, he had kind of a rough game, if I'm not mistaken, but nevertheless, I thought Elliott played really well, and I think the veteran presence, one of the things that you know, helped the team is they knew that Elliott was back there and it wasn't Hart. So I think it gave them a little boost, like, okay, we have to play better in front of him, and that's kind of weird because they did play better for the first time. Like I actually said, like, they played really well yesterday. Quite honestly, it was a game they should have won that they lost, and maybe that did have something to do with it because they knew they didn't have their savior in the back.
Maybe. I think Honestly, I think they were due. I think this team is too good to be playing the way that they're playing. I'm still, I don't want to say like shocked, but I'm definitely surprised. Not that we're losing. I could see us losing to the Islanders. That I said in the beginning, they are a very good team. Nobody should be surprised that they are doing this. Nobody should be surprised if they make it to the finals. They're definitely capable of doing it. But, it's surprising to see the Flyers play such a sloppy game at times where I'm like, where is this coming from? And you mentioned Niskanen. That is definitely a player where I don't want to say, I'm not going to pick on him and be like he has been atrocious, but he definitely hasn't played to the same level he played during the season. Maybe again, a lot of the veterans seem to be suffering a little bit from that time off. Maybe the lack of proper training. Like, I've thought about that. Like, maybe they didn't get the same training that they normally did. They didn't know how to train properly and build up to the season the way they normally do, and it's just enough to throw them off. And now they're going to start picking it up maybe as we get, like, ousted out of the playoffs, And I don't know. It's just something to consider because I don't know where it came from, but I am still a little surprised. I mean, there have been some really bright spots, especially in bursts. Like, I think Phil Myers has looked at times exceptional. I think Travis Sanheim is definitely, like, just putting smiles on my face as far as, like, with him and Provorov. I feel so comfortable having them as a 1-2 punch for the future. Provorov, obviously, just eating up a ridiculous amount of minutes, taking a bunch of punishment, which we were talking about Trotz earlier. You don't see that with their D. They don't put out anybody for 25 minutes a night. And I think about that now. Like, are we kind of overusing Provorov a little bit and bringing out his blemishes, where maybe we need to take down his minutes, maybe 1 or 2, which, I see Niskanen kind of struggling a little bit. And I can't help but think, I brought this up the other night, that maybe that adjustment we make in the offseason is to bring in an elite defenseman to play with Provorov and Sanheim. And like a guy who can fill in and really be relied on. The way when we brought in Pronger, it kind of helped everything fall into place. But anyway, that's kind of going off into the future. But I think we have a chance. So we've seen a lot of quotes from some of the players. Provorov in particular has said specifically, we lost, but it's not over. Like, none of these players feel like they're out. None of these players feel like this is the end, and none of them feel like they're going to be going home early. Now, I think that's great. But if we go into tomorrow's game, there are probably going to have to be some kind of adjustments, right? Like, do you assume that we're going to go in with the same lineup that we went into last games with? Like, is there going to be anything different? Are we going to put anybody out or in? I will say guys like JVR maybe had their best game so far. And maybe he gets elevated, maybe he doesn't. Maybe they just keep that line together. I want to hear ideas. I want to hear what do you guys think? The coaches are going to play around with the lineup, but they're going to go with the same thing. Frankie, I'll go to you this time. Go for it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that you've seen a lot throughout these playoffs with AV, and he switched up the lines a lot. And it has worked. I mean, he filled in players, even in the round robin stage when we saw Elliott come in for that game. He did well. He knew what he was doing, and I believe that he still does. But I have to say, yesterday was a really good. It was the best loss we had. A lot of things clicked, and people that know me and follow me, I'm very critical of JVR. My opinion, I don't think he should have came back. I think that he was not producing to what we were hoping when he came back to Philadelphia for a second stint. Yesterday was his best game, and I think I actually was quite excited to see his play and his elevation because he was getting in front of the net. He was making plays, and it was the first time I've seen him use his body. I'm going to say it now. I hope that JVR is in the lineup tomorrow, gentlemen. That's what I'm saying. I can't believe it. But I hope he's in the lineup. I want to see him where he's at. I want to see him stay where he's at. I think that line was one of the best lines of the game. I don't see many changes except Carter Hart coming back. I think last night was really good. I think Ghost has filled in a little bit, and in this series he kind of isn't what they're really needing right now. Haig has played unbelievable. They could trust Haig. If you remember back now, during the regular season. Ghost was out for a period of time, and Haig filled in very, very nice, and it really shows what we can have. And we now, finally, the Philadelphia Flyers have some depth in defense, which is really nice to have. I liked last night's line. I think that they're going to rock with it. I don't know who they're going to be, who will produce to what we need, but I've liked last night's lines, and I really think that he should consider going with the same lines, and that's my opinion.
I think that makes sense. Ant, you got your thoughts?
Yeah. So as far as the line or the lineup goes in general, I'd roll the same thing, just like everyone's saying here. Depending on Raffle, if Raffle can play, I would somehow fit him in. Honestly, I know Farabee's been playing like pretty good, but I think he makes a lot of bonehead forecheck decisions. Like he goes right at a guy instead of trying to angle him to the boards, and then it gives them an easy breakout. So I would maybe put Raffle in as having a more veteran team and just like going through it. I maybe would throw him in there. Yeah, exactly. Physicality. We talked about this, Yariv, when we watched the game that we don't think the Flyers are physical enough, honestly. So if he's ready to go, then I would definitely insert him over Farabee. That would be the only change I made. I like Lawton at center. I think he looks a lot better at center. And I think it's because we saw a nice little glimpse of what Lawton could be as an offensive player in the round-robin series. We also talked about how those round-robin series were kind of like preseason games. So they weren't everyone's best effort. So he is a third-line player. Maybe he can slide up and down the lineup here and there in certain situations, but I like him at 3C, honestly, over Grant, because Grant hasn't been really doing much. He's fine as a fourth-line guy. He's another big body who I think you need. Even at the end of the game yesterday when they got that second goal, he made a great play on the forecheck, used his body, got the puck over, back out to the point, bada bing, bada boom. But, I would go with the same lineup, quite honestly. And to kind of going off what Frankie said about Hag, I thought Hag had a bad game 3, just a couple of decision things like what hurt you in playoffs.
Mistakes.
Because mistakes hurt you in playoffs. But I thought last night he rebounded really well. Again, going to mention physicality. He's probably our most physical defenseman, and he was hitting people like, a couple games now. Flyers are giving up goals where the Islanders are behind the net, and they put it right back out in front. Well, Hag was doing a great job of pinning those guys off of the board, so they didn't even get behind our net. They were getting hit at the goal line or in the corner. So I thought he had a really strong game. I wouldn't change the defense, even though they made a few mistakes, but go same lineup, get Raffle in there if you can, and again, it's a dire need situation. So if he's 50-50 or 70% healthy, he's getting in there, in my opinion.
Yeah, piggybacking off you real quick, Ant. Yeah, Raffle. You remember back when last time we were in the playoffs, Washington Capitals. Raffle really was one player in the playoffs that he is that player that will send that spark, getting that first goal of the game. And you pick it up from there. You've seen it quite a few times already. Raffle gets it started, and they kind of feed off that energy. And I don't think that has a lot to do with maybe his presence here. He's been here for a little bit now. You're starting to see young kids come up and want to fill that spot. But it all goes back to he's the ignite. He's the spark. And then you kind of feed off of Raffle's energy. So I think I think that would be great. I really hope he can make it. I'm gonna throw this real quick out here, but do you guys see a possibility of Oscar Lindblom playing any time in this series?
No, unfortunately,
yeah.
no.
Yeah. It would be like the Gagne effect, though, from 2010. Remember when Gagne came back, got the game-winning goal in the first game back? Someone else said that to me.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. I would love, I'm the first guy who's like, if he's ready, let's do it. But I don't know. I guess it's hard to bank on because I feel like if he was ready, he would be talked about in some degree. But then again, we're not finding anything out.
We're not finding anything out. Yeah,
we also have we have no connection. So I just say I thought he was kind of brought along because of the energy that he brought with the team, and they thought that would be the most value. And if he could come back, but Chuck Fletcher did say he's like, I don't see why it would be an issue. So I don't know what that means exactly. It could just be talking off the cuff, and it's just him just saying, we wish for the best. They always say that type of stuff. But it's an interesting thought. I mean, ideally, that's why I would put Raffle in for Farabee, is because that's what I see Raffle is kind of like a poor man's Lindblom at this point. He can do a lot of the same things, like the forechecking, the board battles, the veteran presence, the defensive game. Now, I think Farabee has all that potential to go probably even above beyond Lindblom potentially. But I think Raffle just has a really good game. He's played really well. If he's healthy, I would agree with that. I'm open to lineup changes, actually, even going into this game, but I don't think we're going to get it. I think we're going to get consistency, same thing, almost the exact same lineup. I think Raffle, even that third line, what about this scenario? And I thought about this, and I'm not necessarily pro this. My gut instinct says no, to be honest. But what about elevating JVR to second line and putting Raffle on the third line, and you get that trio back of Lawton, Raffle, and Pitlick?
100%. That's what I was going to say. If you do have Raffle available, move JVR up because, like Frankie had mentioned, like he was moving his wheels last night. So and he won a lot of battles. Yeah, reward him a little bit. Like that might just give him the little boost that he needs. And I know we mentioned it when maybe 1 or 2 episodes ago about trying to get Frost into the lineup. At this point, there's no point because the Islanders are too good as a team where to throw someone in there who's like throwing another piece into the puzzle who hasn't seen this before, never a playoff game. Like if someone got hurt, that would be the only way I see him getting.
I thought that versus Montreal, not really against the Islanders. I was constantly okay, if Montreal's speed is such an issue, which I actually do not believe it was. I think it was just poor play that was making Montreal. They are fast, but it makes them look fast if you play poorly. I think that was my thought. I was like, if we're actually not worried about speed, let's throw Frost in. I was like, he's the fastest forward we have on forward. Most likely, he's probably the fastest guy. So why wouldn't you have him in the lineup? That's a team that does, in my opinion, they play their best hockey I've seen in a very long time. But I wouldn't play him against the Islanders. I think the Islanders would eat him alive. I think they're eating Farabee. They're eating Farabee.
There's no chemistry with him right now, you know. So it's
you make a mistake, you're done.
You don't want to do that to that kid. You know what I mean? It's tough. It's tough. I think this team can really. I mean, it's don't want to jump the gun, but they can win. They can win games. So they have the talent, and they've shown it. It's just tough to say. It's just
I would love
it gets the wheels turning. It's like they have the talent. What is going on right now?
I'll be honest with you. I would be, and I don't want to say satisfied is not the right word, but if they were to win 2 games and lose in a game 7, obviously that would be crushing at the same time. But it would show that they have the heart to compete, and that would be better to build on than to kind of fade out into next season. And I think that's the goal, is to show that you're going to compete to every game. Every game is an opportunity to win the cup.
And I think with that being said, if what has to happen for these games to extend and the Flyers to keep battling is you'll probably get production from your top guys, which you want to see production out of them going into an off season. You don't want to go into an off season
where
you haven't produced in when they need you the most.
Yeah.
So we get to a game 7, players are going to be stepping up, and we're finally going to see what we want to see.
And my whole thing is, what does even next year look like as an NHL? Not as the Flyers, as the NHL. How many games is it going to be?
Is it going to be something
that? Yeah, is it going to be something that benefits the Flyers? You never know, because a lot of these players
have 82 games.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they're saying.
They're going to do these 3 p.m. games on us. They're going to do that to us all.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be like baseball.
I loved it.
You know what I mean? Hey, which is cool, but it affects my work. But
they said hub cities, right? I think they said 8 hub cities potentially.
Yeah.
So you would roll games. Go ahead, Anth.
We talked about the crowd and how the Flyers really do play to a home advantage, except when they're just screaming shoot for no reason. But aside from that, they do feed off the crowd in many ways. So what does even next year look like, right? So it's funny that
I miss the crowd.
Yeah, so do I, 100%. But you know what? At the end of the day, they have 1 game to win, and I just hope, and I'll kind of throw this back to you guys, for your thoughts on this. Are the players going to be more pressured now because they know they have to take this by 60 minutes at a time, and you have a guy like Giroux who has all this pressure to get it done in 16 minutes, a guy like Coots, a guy like TK who has all this pressure to get in 16 minutes. This is where you separate good teams from great teams. And if the Flyers want to be a great team, Yariv, you said it best. If they can win 2 of these games in a row, and even if they lost in a game 3, you'd be like, man, the boys went out there, they gave it their all. and even if they got pumped in that Game 7 or something, right? You're like, they put it to the limit, right?
Yeah.
That's what you want to see. That Dallas Stars team last year who lost in double OT in a Game 7, they walked away from
We'll
that.
talk about
probably,
them.
Yeah, pretty pissed, probably. But at the end of the day, they're like, wow, at the end of the year, we just lost in a double OT to a Stanley Cup champion. Like, you can almost pat yourself on the back for that. So this is going to separate the boys from the men tomorrow.
That's a tough loss. That is. I mean, certain players you're looking at. I mean, guys are coming to an end. I mean, I'm not saying this is the final ride for them, but I'm saying that this could be the final ride for them. I mean, the players, our top guys, have to step up. They have to play. They have always the two sets of fan bases. I like to say you have your Flyers fans like us. Like we get to a Game 7, we push this team. That's good. We didn't know what to expect. The season was crazy. We're happy we have hockey. Yoo-hoo. Then you have the fan base like...
Sorry, Frankie, go ahead.
Sorry about that. Yeah, no, I thought my bad. So then you have the team that says, oh, you guys played a 6th place team. You should have won. You guys got killed. It's like, listen, you're a troll, all right, pal? Step aside.
They're not a 6th place team, though. This is not your average 6th place team.
Not at all.
I mean, they swept teams going into playing us. You know what I mean? Like, they swept... But I honestly believe the Capitals were... If we would have continued the season, they would have found their way down that lineup. I don't think it's any surprising that their coach fired. I think he lost that locker room prior to the break.
I mean, you lose somebody he just won you a cup 2 years ago, and then you get rid of the guy. That's going to leave a sour taste in a lot of those players. And that team has been together for a long time.
Well, from my understanding, they didn't have a choice. They were locked into. They had a contract option of giving him too little money, and that's all they could do. So his option was either take less money or go get a new contract from another team. I mean, he doubled his salary overnight. He went from making
and he knocked the team out too. How about that?
Well, dude, incredible, man. Respect to Barry Trotz, regardless. Yeah. All right, so let's go into the other series, and actually a really interesting point of all these series. I believe they're all at 3-1. No, I think Vegas is up 3-2. Nope, they're all 3-1.
3-1, yeah.
All at 3-1, I believe. So that is the interesting thing about these games is that all the series are in a similar position. So let's go around. Let's go for first game in the East right now. Actually, Boston is playing the Lightning. They're currently, as we record this, they're playing right now. Their game just started. Boston is on the brink of defeat. They're in a similar position the Flyers are. The Tampa Bay Lightning look fantastic and good for them. They look hungry and maybe, will be the Stanley Cup champions this year if they continue what they're doing. Bruins are almost out. I think the Bruins... there's a good chance they survive for another game today, but I do think the Lightning do walk away with this one. And honestly, it's kind of nice to see the Lightning come out if the Flyers aren't going to be taking it, because it's kind of frustrating to see a team with that much talent not compete. And then you're like, well, how do you win a cup? Like, you can't have all the best players and then still not win a cup. It's like infuriating. So that's my thought. I think the Lightning will still take it. Frankie, let's go with you on this one. What do you think about this series?
Oh man, I'll tell you. I'll say this: Tampa Bay really knows how to win without Steven Stamkos, don't they? I mean, when Steven Stamkos went out, and then they found out that they had Nikita Kucherov. Wow! I mean, when Stamkos got hurt, and he just soared. I call it the Steve Stamkos effect. It's I was surprised, but when I saw that Boston had lost their goaltender and he was leaving the bubble, I was like, that's a real shift change. Halak's a good goalie, but I think that hurt them when they had Tuukka Rask in, and then he had left. I think that really affected them. So I think Tampa Bay is definitely going to take the series. It's really wild to see because they were always it was like they were the Washington Capitals forever. That they were the best team during the season. They would get in the playoffs and they just couldn't make it happen. And I think that this could be the year. I really think that they could make a big push and make it to the Stanley Cup.
Truth. Anth?
Yeah, I mean, once Halak was the starter goalie, I said this 2 pods ago, they were done. So, I mean, Tuukka Rask is a game changer, even though Bruins fans hate him for some reason and rip on him for some reason. Even before the bubble situation, but for some reason they don't realize how good he is. We do, because when we play against him, we're like, we got to play Tuca. All right, great. Here comes the 2-goal maximum game. So, so there's that with that series. We talked about it in the last podcast. Braden Point is just an absolute maniac out there, and he's my favorite player in the NHL right now to watch. I mean, if you saw that assist he had the other day to, I think it was Palat in front of the net. I mean, again, just an unreal move on Torrey Krug, who's supposed to be one of the better defensemen. Not one of the better defensive defensemen, but he's a good defenseman nonetheless. Makes a nice move on him, dishes the puck. Dude's awesome. So they're ending it tonight.
He's unbelievable, and you know what? He is something nice to watch. Like when you can lock in on a player and really just appreciate their game. I mean, he's sensational. He's got it going on, and he's going to be something bright for that team for a while.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Quite frankly, that team is deep enough to combat any kind of injury woes that they have. And I'm sure that they have some kind of really good young player that we're not even talking about that's like in their system that just can't even break their lineup. And that's kind of the reality of depth. And even the Flyers are kind of in that position. Like we were just talking about Frost. We're not even naming other young kids that if this was a different organization, they would have already touched the NHL ice. We're just not in that position anymore, which is why the way we're playing is so upsetting, because we're supposed to be better. All right, let's go to the next one. Let's go over to the West. I'm going to start off with Vegas and Canucks. I want to get into Dallas last. Frankie, I'll open up to you again on this one. Knights up in the series. Yeah, what do you think?
Who would have thought the Vegas Golden Knights would have came in the lead and was destructive immediately? I mean, their first year they came in and went to the Stanley Cup against the Washington Capitals. Unfortunately, it was just the Capitals' time. I mean, they beat the Penguins, and you knew that they were going to make their run, and Ovechkin was going to get his cup. But Vegas came in, and people have to really look at this team. I mean, they've been in the league now for a couple of years. They can do it, and they probably will do it again. I mean, setting up for a great Western Conference Finals, I'll tell you that, but Vegas is powerful. They have those players that they just know how to play well together. I mean, that team has only been in the league for a few years now. Another thing that they have two great goalies, and it comes down to that sometimes. I mean, you saw Fleury get the call last night. He was sensational. He's a Stanley Cup champion. When you have two goalies that they do, you can make a run, and they know how to play well together. I'm impressed with Vegas. I think that they came in and it was good for the town and good for the league to see a new team, new franchise come in and have immediate success.
Anth, what do you think about about this series? No surprise. I would say this is no surprise.
Yeah, I mean, I said this a couple times now. They're just the most complete team in the playoffs right now, and
sure.
I was talking to someone earlier, and I'm thinking even if the Flyers get out, like they're probably still my pick to win the cup, honestly, because they're just so complete. Like, and their guys are stepping up. I was watching the game last night, and you see guys like they brought up the kid Wah, right, and he's dangling in the neutral zone, making passes. Last night, the one goal, I think it was Stevenson on their team, had an absolute beauty of a play. So they're just, even their fourth line guys are getting it done. They're just like a well-oiled machine right now. I don't think anyone's stopping them. And then, frankly, like you alluded to, they got two good goaltenders. Dog's getting up there.
Yeah.
They got two unreal goaltenders. And Fleury played awesome last night, even giving up 3 goals. Like, he made really good saves at key times in the game. And what it did, actually, if you watch the game, he made those saves, and then they went and got one. It was weird watching the game like that last night. And Markstrom gave up a couple softies, honestly, but they did bounce back, pretty aggressively after those saves. And man, that team is awesome to watch. And quite honestly, if it can't be the Flyers, it's them. Unfortunately, both teams I still want. If it's not going to be the Flyers or in the West. So we'll talk about the next one in a second. But I wouldn't mind seeing them take a cup.
Yeah, it's almost like. I agree. It's so good for the sport. So good for expansion. Like, there's a reason Seattle's happening. I mean, look how successful Vegas was. They have to be thinking like, oh, we have a chance to become like a legit franchise. I mean, the Vegas Golden Knights are definitely impressive. They're extremely deep. They are a better version of the Islanders in a lot of ways. Maybe they don't have Barry Trotz, but they have the same I don't know. It's not even fair, actually, because they really just have depth at all positions, right? Like, all of their defensemen are good. All of their forwards are good. They have 2 good goalies. It's kind of like Tampa Bay without the upper echelon, like, super dynamic players,
Superstar.
But they just have a ridiculous amount of depth. I mean, their superstar, I would say, is Mark Stone, who is a star player for sure. But it's like Sean Couturier. He's not the most dynamic player. He's just an elite two-way guy. And they just don't do it in like the fanciest ways. They are a scary. They are a scary team. I mean, they're legitimately, if it is like, let's just say Tampa Bay, Vegas. I mean, that is actually, if you think about Highlanders, Vegas is a weird matchup. But Tampa Bay, Vegas seems like it could be the one there at the end, and that would be a really interesting series. Actually, that'd be really like high-powered offense versus like super balanced. Yeah, just
super goaltenders.
Yeah,
that's great. That would be a lot. It would actually be a lot of fun to watch. I mean, that'd be enjoyable, but we'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. Let's talk about our last series here, because as far as let's call them the dark horse at this point, because this is Anth. This is your team. I'll open up to you first here. But Dallas, kind of owning the high-powered Avalanche. And remember this, Anth. We were on together, and initially they asked for my team, and I was like, you know what? I was like, their defense is too young for me. And as soon as that, I realized that, right? And it's kind of our problem as well to a degree. As soon as you realize that, you see why Dallas probably has their lead. Because like you said, all the reasons, they were so close in the prior. They already had a recipe, and they've only just now gotten a little bit better. What do you think about the Stars? Ant, I'll open up to you first.
So let me first explain why I love the Stars so much, right? So it all started back to when Mike Madonna's jersey was just flapping in the wind, just flying up the rink like he, was just zipping around out there. Actually, I like the Stars because when they won the Cup, I was on vacation. I was in Florida, and I was watching the game. And for some reason, I just always like the Stars from there moving forward in the West. And it's been like that forever. And also, they're my Chelsea team. So that kind of explains my love for them and why I picked them. Being a little bit of a homer for them. But their team, again, just well-balanced. They're big. They're hard to play against. Guys like Jamie Benn, like, he's got hands, but he's also a mean guy, right? Like, he's just an unreal player. And then their defense, Heiskanen, is playing unreal, along with Klingberg. So they're just playing awesome. Kudobin, surprisingly, playing pretty well for a backup goaltender. So with that being said, I don't know if they're going to beat Vegas in a series necessarily, but they're definitely going to take the Avs here, and it is a surprise, especially with how they're beating the Avs. High-scoring games, and they're kind of working them, so they're never out of a game. So it's pretty impressive from them.
It's very impressive. Shut down maybe the best line in the league so far. Frankie, what do you think, man?
That's so well said too, and that's great that you had a little bit of history. I mean, I remember watching Mike Modano come flying up the ice. He's one of the greatest American-born players to ever play, if not number one, arguably. They have leadership. I mean, you see, like a couple of these guys that he mentioned. Yeah, you still have guys like Jamie Benn, who's been there for a while. I mean, they have
Pavelski.
Yeah, Pavelski's still going. I mean, he had his first ever career hat trick. He's been in the league father time.
And he's a 40 goal scorer too.
He's been, yes, and he's played with some good players. So they're like the Cinderella team of the playoffs, and they're one of the most consistent teams, ironically. The two usually don't match up, but they're playing some good hockey. I wouldn't mind seeing them do it. I think Western Conference has been, they've always been like a high-powered house, and they're starting to come back a little bit with teams like Boston and the Avalanche that have done so well as well. So I think it's going to be interesting. I think it's pretty good. It's a good series. I think that the Dallas Stars are going to take it. Yeah,
I mean, I think it's interesting when you see this type of stuff. And this is what I love about the playoffs, is that it really shows what teams can play a 60-minute game. Because even we'll knock the Flyers here. It's like we were flying high. I mean, I was flying high for sure because I saw a team that was playing tight defensively for the first time in years. And I was like, this is what I want to see. This is the type of teams that make it into the playoffs. And now it's kind of suffering a little bit, And it's really interesting to see how Dallas Stars, a team that on paper, you wouldn't necessarily look at that team and be like, oh, they play shutdown hockey, right? but they're balanced. They have the grit, they have the size, they have the right roles. They have the high-powered offensive defenseman as well if they need him as well, and Klingberg, right? They have that right balance of everything. And I think the physicality is playing a huge role in it. It almost goes back to that Boston Bruins team of like when Milan Lucic was in his heyday. It's almost like that era is back in a way where it's like still high skill, still high speed, but like physicality is still a humongous element in hockey. And I feel like maybe even more now without the fighting being an element and with the game being so fast that if you can really line up a guy with a hit, that can be your fight, right? That can change the entire momentum of the game. And a good hit too. And not just one big hit, but a series of hits, right? The physicality on a forecheck, right? And the ability to resist the forecheck, which for all the Flyers' size, maybe they haven't done the best job of that this year. So, it's just interesting to see that. And I do agree. I think Dallas is going to go over, and I think they're going to give the Golden Knights a fit here. And I think that's something, obviously, if it continues the way it's going, that is quite clear to me. Like, I clearly underestimated Dallas, right, to some degree, and I don't think you did. But, that would be an interesting matchup there in the East. And then if it does end up being like Tampa Bay and the Islanders, I mean, that's also fascinating. These are actually, for the first time in a while, I would say all the teams are like legit contenders. So there's no like real like surprises, I would say, that much in here. Yeah. So, all right. So we're coming down to the end, but I do want to talk about what happens if the Flyers lose. What is next? There are obviously varying degrees of scenarios. There's also the draft upcoming. I'm going to wait to say my stuff. Frankie, I'll go to you first on this one. What do you say? Let's say the Flyers lose in 5. Let's say they lose in 6. Doesn't really matter. Let's just say they're out. What do you see? What do you see like the next steps? At least the early next steps.
Well, going by the way what people have been saying, I mean, a couple things you have to take into consideration, and I won't spend too much time on this part. But when does the season get back underway? When do the Flyers go back to work? Because ultimately, that's going to play a factor of free agency. How long is the free agency period going to be? I think you're going to start seeing some of these veteran players make their move and maybe not be here next year. And the Flyers have serious depth. Flyers have Frost down there. They have Ratcliffe down there. They have players down there that could potentially start coming up and making more appearances. I think what we've seen, and it's been a while since we've seen it, is we're starting to see the players jump in and take over some of those old vets that have been here. So I think that free agency is going to be interesting. I'm curious on who will come back. I know we've mentioned, I think Niskanen will return. Does JVR stay? Does Voracek stay? So some of these players, are they going to stay, or are they going to go over to possibly another team? So I think that's something big that's going to be focused on. And I'm also going to mention a little side note here. It comes down also to players playing hard going into this. You want to keep pushing. You want more time. Time's almost running out. These are every shift counts right now. And for the Philadelphia Flyers and for some of these players. So I think that it will be a very interesting offseason. But in my opinion, I think we're going to start seeing some of the veterans that have been here for a long time make other way.
Sure. And what do you think, Ben?
Yeah, so I think going off that, the biggest question you ask is, can this core get it done? We've had this core for a while now. They haven't done anything. Can this core get it done? If not, I think you do need to shake it up. Now, you do have the expansion draft, which kind of throws a wrench into it. You do have the salary cap staying flat for probably the next 2 years. So all these free agents, right, are probably going to be looking for short-term deals, in my opinion, because some of them that are on the younger side know that they're going to get another shot, a crack at a bigger contract after the cap does eventually go up. And then you have players that are kind of the veteran players at the end of their career, maybe not at the end, but maybe in the middle or towards the end, that are going to obviously get hurt on their last couple of years of their contract. They're going to be looking for term, but they're going to be, on that term, they're going to have to take a little bit of a salary cut, right? So you ask yourself, does the core get it done? What do we know we need from this playoff, the snapshot of this playoffs? We know we need a natural goal scorer. I've been saying it for years. We need a scoring winger. We still haven't brought one in, right? JVR was not the answer, unfortunately. He's a goal scorer, but he's a goal scorer from within the blue paint. We do not have a shooter. Yariv, you've been mentioning this to me all playoffs. We don't have a big body who goes in there and hits like we had Simmons in his good years, right? So there's a couple things that you're looking to fill. Yariv, you brought it up earlier, and I didn't originally have it on my radar. But I don't know if you necessarily need a bona fide top, pairing defenseman, but I think you need a 2-3 guy who can play a 2-3-4 role somewhere in there. There's a lot of good defensemen just looking at it right off the top, right off of here. A bunch of good defensemen like TJ Brody, Tyson Barrie, Pietrangelo. You're probably not going to get him. He's going to be a little too high of a price point there, but there's a lot of good defensemen that are out there. Travis Hamonic, he's a right shot D guy who I know his family and he has family problems, so he's probably staying in Western Canada. But there's guys out there that I think you could get it filling in that D position. And then as far as forwards go, you got to look at the Winnipeg Jets. They're the first people I look at if I'm in the offseason. They have Patrick Laine and Ehlers, right, who are their two guys that are kind of like, what are we going to do with them? They're not moving Scheifele, they're not moving Wheeler, and they're not moving Connor. They're in cap hell right now, so they need to move someone. Who's it going to be? I'll tell you what, I'll take Ehlers or Laine on my team. Laine you're probably going to have to pay for, or someone else that one of my buddies brought up earlier today, he wouldn't mind seeing for the size you read, Anthony Mantha. He's another good guy, big body, just started getting his scoring touch this year. Could be that guy that's like JV with some cahoots to him, So hopefully, something like that can come to fruition. And then, I think, again, you're going to probably let Braun walk. Do you bring back Niskanen if you can get a little better of a player, considering you do have a ghost?
He's got 1 year left.
Yeah, Niskanen. So Niskanen's got the 1 year, right?
Yeah.
Braun's the one who's out this year, so
right.
You might as well keep Niskanen, and he's got the familiarness with Provorov, right? So you're really looking to fill, maybe have another guy playing that 4, like I said, 2-3-4 guy you're looking for, right at the end of the day.
Well, see, and this is what I thought is maybe Niskanen actually, he would end up dropping down to the bottom pairing for the last. And if you can bring in an elite guy, like I would love a goal scorer, but I don't know if we have to get that. But I was like, if we can get a true veteran that can play here for a few years with Provorov, and to really carry the burden of answering the questions, and also like I just watch even like little plays with Provorov. Don't get me wrong, I know he is a future Norris candidate, but there are little things where you just see a savvy veteran with, I don't know, Provorov's skill, but even somebody a little less. And I would say Niskanen actually did this a lot this year. Just make all the little plays look really easy. We need somebody who can do that. It's just super calm and steady, and also physically can take up some punishment as well. Like maybe if he's Drew Doughty would be incredible. Obviously that's a franchise caliber guy, but even some of the names, I thought TJ Brody's a great name to bring up, but we could use another veteran guy who I think we were all hoping we had that in Niskanen. I don't know. I don't know if he's going to last the whole thing. That's why I was like, maybe we drop his role and then bring in an elite guy. I do think the question marks with Patrick need to be answered. If he's coming back, that's a humongous game changer. Lindblom will be back next year. We didn't get a 3-year contract for no reason. That is a humongous game changer. The addition of those two players, I think the Flyers are in a vastly different position in the playoffs. It's just, I've said this before, it's too much talent to deal with. Like, even if they're playing well, if every single line is a goal-scoring line, it's very difficult to deal with no matter how talented your team is, which is why Vegas and all these teams are doing really well. So there are a lot of question marks up in the air for me, but I do imagine the veterans will walk. The Flyers will probably let most of the veterans walk. I can't see any of them really staying and maybe looking to upgrade. I do think the Flyers will be active at the draft to some degree, and maybe, again, I love Shane Goss's pair, but his role is not available. There are young players who are knocking on the door for power play time. This might be the opportunity to move him. You need other pieces. There's other roles that we need to fill. The draft is up and coming. It's a weird time. He's locked up on a great contract. Teams need offensive help.
He's got a pretty decent 4.5 hit, so that's not terrible for someone to take on, right? That's not bad at all. So it's almost a bargain depending, again, on his role that he's filling on that team. But if you look at the UFAs, you got Thompson, Pitlick, both making a mil. Grant making $700K. So you're not really shedding a whole lot of salary. So it's going to be tight because
Braun,
Braun, and you need to sign a backup goalie, and you need to sign a backup goalie too. Unless you're going to let someone come up through the system, which I don't think they are. I think they're probably just going to give it to Elliott. Yeah, they might just give it to Elliott because of how much he's helped with Hart. So you still have some pieces you have to fit. I think on the defensive side of things, like you said, it would be nice to get a number 2, but they're not going to have the cap, I don't think, to get a Pietrangelo. He's demanding 5.7 now. He's definitely getting paid out.
He's going to make $11 million a year.
Oh, yeah.
The Hamonic was my first initial thought because he's making 3.8. So even with a little bit of a salary bump, if you get rid of Goose and you give him the 4.5, you kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul there.
I was thinking more of a package deal, like package Ghost, package your first, package another player, and maybe a pick, and try to get an elite guy, like literally an elite defenseman from a team that is maybe in a rebuild that is willing to give up a guy like Chris Pronger, at the end of their rebuild. That to us, 4 years of that player. That's why I said Drew Doughty is like an immense addition. It would literally boost the entire morale of the team. It would take a ton of weight off of Claude Giroux, which is something we need to do desperately. I mean, you see the look on his face, the way that. And again, this is the burden of being captain, which is why I hate that stupid C on people's chest, because you just put so much, pressure on that one guy. Or even like Shea Weber, obviously, but look at what Shea Weber was doing in the playoffs against us. We need a guy who can complement Provorov because again, he's only 22 years old, right? Or 23 years old. It's like the guy. He's only in the very beginning of him really being an upper echelon defenseman, and he's really got another 2 years before he hits his prime, even. So it's like, and I don't know. I would love a veteran to help even take some away, and then add the fact that we would still have Niskanen on top of that with the team.
Drop him down, let him play on second line like you mentioned, and you bring somebody in. I mean, you don't want to waste but you want these players that are young, because we are young. You want this time to be their best years, and they're going to come into their best years. So you want to get them the best help and keep doing it. I personally, I'm going to jump back to what you guys were saying. I really liked Niskanen this year. I think he filled in nice. I think it would be great for him to put some good depth on the second line for defensemen. But I really liked him a lot this year. And he was a veteran. He's been playing for a while. He's the only Stanley Cup winner we have on our current roster right now is Matt Niskanen. So he does bring that leadership. You look for him to make the move. I mean, I like him. I think he's been a good addition. I think he will stay for his final year next year. But you have 2 contracts that you're paying some people some money. JVR's contract, he's signed for a 5-year, $35 million contract. Jake Voracek, he has 2 years left on his 8 years, $55 million.
Yeah.
Do you let these guys go a little early and cut money to make that big blockbuster trade to bring in another player?
I think with JVR, I think they will probably look to try to move him. And it's not so much that he's like a big disappointment. It's the same thing as Ghost. It's you have guys for that role that will take his job. And like Lindblom is out right now, but if he was playing, he would be taking all of JVR's minutes. Like it wouldn't even be a question. Right?
I agree.
He'd be a top line left winger. Even at the way this team is playing right now, he theoretically could have been our best player. The way he was playing this year.
Playing too. He was the leading goal scorer before he went out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're talking about a position where he's in trouble. And, again, Nolan Patrick didn't even get to play this year. He's only 21 years old. I know everybody wants to quit on him. I personally do not feel that way at all. If he comes in and makes a kind of jump that Lindblom and Konechny made, I mean, you're talking about another humongous addition. That's where, even where I say that I want to make all these moves, I would be okay with another, kind of more patient approach and maybe even add during the season, because there's so much young talent here that maybe I'd like to see how they do first. But it'd be interesting. All right, we're coming to the end here. Anything anybody want to add? Go ahead, Ant.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm with you kind of with like, this, you put it in asterisk, not next to the Stanley Cup because it's, because of the break, but because of the break almost. Because the Flyers, how they were rolling, we probably aren't having a lot of these conversations if we just went right into playoffs, right? They were flying high right in the playoffs and really, really buzzing. So at the end of the day, I think it's just minor plays, right? That's why you're looking at the roster and you're like, man, with Lindblom and Patrick in there, this team is deadly, like deadly. So, and you have Lindblom signed for 3 years, right? So you expect him to play like Yariv said, and then it comes down to just filling some voids, like the guys like Pitlick and stuff. Yeah, you can let them go because you have an AKB who's not going to be looking for a ton of money. He's on an entry level, so you're bringing him in to fill that fourth line role as a winger who can slide up and down a little bit. So at the end of the day, I think we just we got 2 tough draws in playoffs, and shouldn't be a hit in the panic button, but still you do need to see more out of this core. So it would be nice to get them a little bit of help there to take some of the eyes off of them.
I think they'll try to mix it up. I think they'll be a somewhat aggressive. Maybe not as aggressive as people like, but I do expect one impact player to join this team and one to leave to some degree. Frankie, you got anything to say on that?
Not on that. I want to. Your guys are right. It would be great to get those 2 players back. You want them to see them play. You feel for them. It was so unfortunate for both players to go out, and Nolan Patrick. I hope that he gets back and he comes back healthy and better than ever, because you get those 2 players back, you're talking about only filling a couple little voids and just getting rid of some dead money and going from there, bringing in some new additions. But you get those 2 back. It's the best pickups they can have.
Yeah. Did you have? Oh.
No, that's what I have on that. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Did you have something else you wanted to bring up? You sounded like there's something else you wanted to say.
Yeah. You mentioned any last thoughts. Every shift counts tomorrow. You can't take a shift off. I think they could steal the game. I think Carter Hart obviously has shown that he can steal plays and make things happen. You got these guys, these big guys got to step up. Some of these guys' last chance possibly. They have to step up and put the puck in the net and make plays. It's tough. It's really tough to even have a prediction. I think they can get another win. I personally don't see it going to 7 if they keep playing the way that they're playing.
One game at a time, right? One game at a time.
One shift at a time, man.
And do you have a final thought here?
Yeah, you just hope that they come out tomorrow and give you their best effort. That's all I hope. And I think tomorrow the biggest thing is getting the lead and getting a cushion on that lead. Not just getting one, getting like they did in game 1, getting 2 or 3, because the Isles are going to claw back and get a couple on you. It's just this given. You can't expect to rely on your goaltending the whole time, whether it's Hart or Elliott. It's obviously more than likely going to be Hart, but you got to get out early. You got to just play like it's your last game, right? And that doesn't mean play like it's your last game, go so hard that that you're overcommitting on plays and things like that. It just play with confidence and know that you can play with the Islanders, because last game, if anything, it proved that we can play with them when we're playing our game, and we are not getting pinned in, and the time on attack is 20 minutes of whatever it is. So at the end of the day, we just gotta just play with confidence, play hard, don't go out getting pumped or anything like that, and hopefully, and I truly believe they will get a dub tomorrow. I think like you said earlier, Yariv, they truly don't believe they're out of it, and I think they can win games now, because almost like when the Islanders beat us or came back on us, they knew they could beat us even when we played well. I think them beating us yesterday, we're like, all right, we know we could play with them. So I think they got the dub tomorrow.
I like that.
They better get the dub tomorrow, man.
I'm praying, man, or else my dog's gonna jump out the window again. So
yeah, let's see, he's ready. All right, and with that, we'll come to an end of this episode. Thank you so much for listening. We're obviously rooting for a win. Hopefully, when we come back next week, we'll still be watching Flyers hockey. If not, we will definitely be with you all summer long, or all summer. That was wrong. All through the off season, which will be through the fall and the winter, I guess, portions of the winter. We will still have content going, stuff for the draft. Already going to have somebody, the draft analyst, on a little bit down the line. If you guys don't know who that is, look him up. He's Steve Corniano, so have him on. We'll have some Flyer prospect talk and stuff like that all through the off season, so do not worry. We will not stop making content. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for coming, guys. I really appreciate it, Anthony and Frankie. Awesome. Yeah, hell yeah. Another great episode. Thank you for listening, and remember to always stay gritty.